Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Terrace Talk. Norwich City travelled to the City Ground this midweek to play former manager Chris Hughton and his Nottingham Forest side. Norwich, of course, sitting quite nicely 10 points at the top of the Championship, which is a rather lovely position to be in, I guess. And we'll ask Michael all about that in a moment. Michael Abrahamson, Norwich City fan, and also joined by Lee Clarke for our Forest view. He's a journalist and a Nottingham Forest fan as well. Michael, let's start with you. You join us all the way from South Africa. So thank you very much for joining us first and foremost. I guess I have to ask, what is it like watching Norwich City's Championship success as it is at the moment from afar?
At the moment, Connor, to tell you the truth, it's wonderful watching Norwich City from anywhere in the world because it's such a great time to be a Norwich City fan, unlike what he was a year ago. But the team just playing so well, and they seem to be able to turn around any match, no matter what the situation they find themselves in. It's just delightful, honestly, to watch them and to know that there's so much belief in the squad that they can go on to turn around matches and dig out results even when things aren't going for them.
Yeah, and we'll reflect on that Sheffield Wednesday game in a moment. I'll ask you because we had an American Norwich fan on, and his story about coming to support Norwich City was actually very interesting in terms of, essentially he fell into supporting Norwich City. He went to Anfield, didn't particularly like it, and then ended up at Carrow Road, which he much enjoyed. What about you? What's your connection in terms of Norwich City? I guess the obvious question is why Norwich City?
Well, originally, you'll laugh at this, but originally it was the colours, because yellow and green are my two favourite colours. So I was looking for a team who play in yellow and green. This was way back in the 1980s. And I thought Norwich City sound like a good team. They weren't doing particularly well, and I always like supporting the underdog. And I've just stuck with them and followed them with very, very keen interest since then. Had a wonderful opportunity to watch them. The only time I've ever watched them live was in 2011 in our promotion-winning season when we played Scunthorpe and won 6-0. So that was the Grant Holt hat-trick in the first half, and then Simeon Jackson came on in the second half as a sub and scored a hat-trick in about 10 minutes. And that was the only time I've ever seen Norwich City play live. So that was a great privilege because my wife's a big Arsenal supporter. And on the same day, she said to me, let's go watch Arsenal and Blackburn at Highbury. Sorry, I beg your pardon. I think they were playing at the Emirates then. But I won the bet. I won the coin toss, and I said to her, let's go watch Norwich. And we saw 6 goals, and the team have delighted me ever since.
Well, there you go. I think you definitely got the better end of the bargain there. I think having seen Norwich against Scunthorpe, that's the glamour that you don't get with watching Arsenal play. Lee, thank you very much for joining us and providing your insight on Nottingham Forest. I guess the obvious question to kind of ask you to kick things off is where are Forest at the moment? Because obviously there was a little bit of a struggle before Chris Hughton came in, and he's a manager that Norwich City fans obviously know well, not necessarily for the best reasons always, but certainly a manager they know well. He seems to have stabilised things a little bit now at the City Ground.
Yeah, I think that is the word, stabilisation, really. I think he wasn't dealt a great hand when he walked into the club. Obviously, he's got I think we had about 5 defensive midfielders to pick from. Obviously, Chris Hughton likes to play 4-2-3-1. And he likes one of those, one of the two to be a progressive player. But when you've got 5 defensive midfielders, for the first couple of months that he was at the club, he was asking someone to kind of fulfill a role that they weren't overly comfortable with. But yeah, I think before our mini blip at the minute that we're on, we'd lost sort of once in about 13, 14 games. So that's kind of pushed us a little bit more comfortable above the relegation zone. So I think it's just about getting to the end of the season for us, to be honest now. Sounds a bit stupid when you're only 9 points above Rotherham and they've got 4 games in hand, but I think all the teams that are down there because they can't put 3 or 4 wins together. So I think the consensus among a lot of fans is that we've probably got just about enough points as it is. So anything we get from here on in should ensure that we're a Championship club again next season.
It's interesting you mention a mini blip because I've got written down in my notes that it's 4 defeats in 18 for Forest, which maybe isn't the worst form in the world considering maybe your league position. So it's interesting to hear you say that. That's why it's always worth getting an opposition fan on. In terms of Chris Hughton, because I think Forest unfairly, I mean, I'd be interested to get your view on this. Maybe a club particularly in recent years, known for maybe not sticking by their managers through difficult periods. Is he someone that, given his pedigree, given his track record at this level, supporters at least feel is the man that can push you guys up the table, possibly next season, beyond as well, and get you and achieve that dream, I guess, that all Forest fans want of getting back into the Premier League?
Yeah, I think if you ask the supporters that go in every week, the proper supporters, I like to call them, rather than the Twitterati, yeah, he's definitely the man that we've got to give a bit of time to. Like you say, his track record just speaks for itself. I think I'm not quite convinced that all Norwich fans overly appreciate what he did there, but at his other clubs, Brighton, Newcastle, I mean, the people have been talking that the job he did at Brighton when he first walked in there looks very similar to what he's been dealt with at Forest. They were languishing near the bottom. He had to pull them away, get a full summer, get his own players in. So hopefully, it's got to stop somewhere. And I think the club hierarchy are sort of realising now that sacking managers doesn't really work. And to be fair, I think the club sticking by Sabri Lamucci in the summer, it would have been so easy, with us having been in the playoffs for so long last season, to fall out on goal difference on the last day. It would have been so easy for them to make a change then, but they didn't. They gave him four games. We lost all four, so it was kind of like we've got to do something. I mean, in the first 4 games of the season, we didn't look like putting 3 or 4 passes together, never mind winning games. So they had to do something. They went for the tried and tested option. And I think, pulling the trigger again now would make us even more of a laughing stock than we perhaps have been in recent years.
Yeah, there was a nice word you mentioned in your first answer, which is stability. That's kind of what it feels it needs. And like you say, Hughton will need time to sort of put his stamp on it and get his own players in. Michael, just for your perspective on Chris Hughton, because I don't think he's a manager that's thought of particularly well, not particularly as a human being. Everyone knows that Chris Hughton is one of the loveliest guys in football, but in terms of the style of football, and there were obviously some real differences between the job he had at Norwich compared to what he had at Forest. Norwich were, of course, a Premier League team. They just had Paul Lambert, one of the most, well, if not the most successful manager in recent history, and he came in with a different style. So there are a lot of differences, but from your perspective, when I say Chris Hughton, what do you think of?
Well, he shored up our defence and kept us in the Premier League for a couple of seasons. I mean, I think we ended 11th this season that he sort of put his stamp on the teams. So certainly he's stabilised us defensively. Obviously, I think most Norwich fans would agree that the style of football that we played was fairly defensive. We tried to maybe take a lead early on in a game and then sort of see it out. But in a way it worked because, as I say, it kept us in the league. We had a few good results under Chris Hughton, and a mid-table finish is not to be sneezed at for a club of Norwich's capacity at that time. So I think he did well. I think the fans maybe misunderstood what he was trying to do, and I think maybe there were times that they didn't maybe always appreciate what was going on behind the scenes. But I would certainly give him a tick for the time that he was in charge of the side, and obviously then things sort of fell away. I remember that 5-0 loss at Brighton when things really went haywire, and defensively we looked all over the place, and he took a lot of flack for that from the fans. So I think things started to slowly go downhill after that. But certainly in the early stages of his time in charge of Norwich, I thought he did pretty well. Yeah,
I remember that 10-game unbeaten run actually that he had at in his first season included a win against Manchester United and a draw against Arsenal. So that almost single-handedly kept Norwich up that run. And like you say, few managers have been able to keep Norwich in the Premier League since. So it's interesting you say that. But anyway, to the current crop, how are you feeling about Norwich City's current situation? I mean, it's difficult to put anything in but a positive spin on where they are at the moment. They're 7 wins away from promotion. Probably won't even take that. They look like they're returning to the Premier League, don't they?
Oh, well, as a statistician, which is what I do in one of my other jobs, I'm constantly trying to do the calculations and seeing what's happening and working out how many points we have to play with. If we take Farke's magic number of 90 points for automatic promotion, then Norwich have got 19 points that they can basically drop in the next 10 games. So they need just 11 to get to 90 points. So 11 from 10 games looks pretty healthy, given that we don't have the most demanding fixtures in our next 5. I think Forest on Wednesday night could be a difficult game. Then it's Blackburn at home. And then what I call the PhD matches, which is Preston, Huddersfield and Derby. And assuming things don't go too horribly wrong in the international break and we don't have players who are too tired who can get back in time and don't have to quarantine, we should be able to pick up a good number of wins in those. And then we have obviously a more difficult run in going into the end of the season. But if you look at Swansea have got only at the moment 12 points to play with that they can drop, and then Brentford and Watford 9 points each. So all that has to happen is Brentford or Watford need to lose perhaps 2 games in the next few, and suddenly they won't be able to catch Norwich. And then I think the situation will become a lot calmer and we can relax in the run-in, which would be a wonderful position to be in, particularly given the fact that some of our players haven't had all that much game time of late. And I think they'd like to be able to get out there and be part of this hopefully very successful season.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a wonderful position they're in when you consider if they beat Forest and then Blackburn next Saturday, they're going to be on 85 points, which is quite a remarkable haul with 9 games left. Or 8 games left. It would be then. Lee, I hope we've not scared you too much with those numbers and those figures. But in terms of what you spoke about, Forest being and needing to get through to the season, is this period now, this 10, 11, however many games Forest have got left period, is this about the players in the squad to kind of prove their worth to Chris Hughton and prove why they should be given another season and be a part of his plans, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's still a little bit. I know I've just said that I think we've probably got enough points anyway, but we'll still want the magic 50. I think we've still got to target that, and I think until we get there, Hughton he'll kind of refrain from experimenting too much. I think he will go with the players, the core 13, 14 players that he's probably used since he came into the club. So, but yeah, there's got to be on Saturday against Reading. We did see a team that looked, to show a little bit of effort, to show a bit of enthusiasm. The week, I think it's been a difficult season because when you're playing Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, you don't get a lot of time to work on things on the training ground. When you're in Norwich's position and you're winning games, that's great because you're just going out there and you're doing your stuff. But when you're having some bad results, it can be kind of the other way, because if you have a bad result, I know people talk that it's great to get back out there, but I think sometimes you could do with working on a few bits on the training ground, especially if you're conceding from set pieces or you're conceding from silly goals. So I think we saw that the week between us playing Watford the previous Saturday and then Reading on Saturday did benefit us. So I think a lot of players we've got a lot of players out of contract. So if they want new contracts next season, they're going to have to pull the socks up. And I thought it was interesting then that you said Norwich could probably afford to drop 19 points and still romp to promotion. So, I mean, if you were willing to send the under-18s on Wednesday night, it would be a welcome boost for us.
Well, it's very true. And you said about the magic 50 number, you guys are only 9 points off that. So that would be 3 wins, wouldn't it, essentially in the final 10 to guarantee your safety. So I think it's probably fair to say that Forest, barring perhaps any sort of implosion and also a real surge from the teams below them, are probably going to be playing championship football again next year. I mean, looking at some of your recent results, and I know you haven't got a win in 3, but it's a 1-1 draw against Forest, a 1-0 defeat to Watford, a 1-0 defeat to Luton, a 1-1 draw with Derby, a 1-0 win against Rotherham, and a 1-0 win against Blackburn. That's a lot of single goals, fine margins. It does feel like Chris Hughton is doing something which is sort of solidifying the defence, I suppose. Is that something that he really needed to change when he came in?
Yeah, I think we still need to be scoring more goals. That goes without saying. I think we scored 29 all season, which I think only it's quite interesting. I think only Derby have scored less than us. So there's something in the water in the East Midlands this season that isn't, it's not working for us in front of goal. But I think every game it's almost like you can almost replay Hughton's comments from after every game, because he just talks about needing to create more chances, needing to score more goals, and to be fair, he's spot on. I don't really know what the fans want him to say. He's not going to come out and say he's happy with seeing his team only score 29 goals this season. No manager's going to be happy with that. But I think what he also realises is we don't have a lot of belief when we go a goal behind. So it's really important that we try and cling on to a clean sheet for as long as possible. The 1-0 wins we have claimed, the 2 you mentioned there, Blackburn and Rotherham, we never really looked like conceding. So whilst we were pretty bland, if you like, in terms of us creating chances and looking like scoring goals, we got the goal and then we sat on it, which in our situation, I don't think it's all about 3 points. So I don't think anyone can be too critical if we are grinding out the 1-0 wins at the moment.
You've only conceded 35 goals, which I think is fewer than 3 teams currently sitting in the playoff places. So that kind of illustrates where the issue is, doesn't it? If you can kind of or correct that goal scoring prowess next season, and obviously you've got a name Norwich fans are familiar with, Lewis Grabban at the top end of the pitch, and I think he's missed some football, hasn't he, this year as well. Does that show that the signs, I guess, for the future are positive, providing Chris Hughton can continue with what he's doing and inject a bit more talent at the top end of the pitch?
It does. I think there is a little bit more to it than that, I suppose, because our best player is probably Joe Worrell. So Premier League clubs are going to be sniffing around him. So that could see the defence decimated. As good as Scott McKenna is, he's not Joe Worrell. So ideally, we'd keep both of those. So as much as we have got a lot of defenders, it'd be nice to keep the academy graduate around. But then at the top end of the pitch, you've got Glenn Murray, who at this stage, he's only got a contract till the end of the season, and he's 37 now anyway. Lewis Grabban and Lyle Taylor are both in the 30s. Grabban's been linked with moves away before, so he's scored 3 goals this season. Taylor's got 4, so there's got to be another striker coming in for me in the summer, someone that's a little bit younger, someone that can come in and perhaps nail down the shirt for 3 or 4 years if they want to.
Really interesting stuff. It's going to be interesting to see how Forest do next year, particularly given Chris Hughton's reputation. Michael, we kind of spoke about Forest's lack of goals and sort of struggles, I guess, this season. Certainly not an issue that Teemu Pukki is having. 21 goals now. He's moved on to the season. I mean, we've got to take a moment to talk not just about his finish against Sheffield Wednesday, but also about Todd Cantwell's 2 exquisite finishes, I think befitting of winning any game.
Absolutely incredible the way that they finished those opportunities that they had. And Pukki, the way that Ollie Skip played him in was just superb. And then one touch and banging it in the top corner. And then for me, the way Emi Buendia took that ball off Windass, because Sheffield Wednesday were looking quite dangerous on the counter at that stage. And Buendia went in, and we know his reputation. We know the referees tend to target him. And if he mistimes the tackle, he's almost certainly going in the book. And he just timed that tackle perfectly, played in at Todd Cantwell, and Cantwell's first touch was superb, just to take it away from the defender. I think it was Palmer, and then work it onto his weaker foot and shoot first time into that top corner. Really, those 3 in a triangle, if you want, are just superb, and they're purring on the field, and it's a great pleasure to watch, and it must honestly scare the opposition to know that those 3 are all in form at the same time and just creating opportunities left, right and centre. And when you've got workhorses like Skip and McLean, I think Kenny McLean does so much good work behind the scenes that goes unrewarded. He's all over the place. He's winning balls in the air and he's creating opportunities. Norwich are constantly moving forward and just playing those 3 in and giving them opportunities to score. And I think the amount of goals that they've scored in the last 10 games, or since we've been on this run, in this 8-game winning run that we've had, has just been a testimony to the whole side and the way that everybody's just come together and kept the belief up, even when things have gone slightly averse in certain games.
Absolutely, I'm calling them Norwich's ABC. I think in terms of the way they roll, they've certainly been in excellent form. You mentioned the run there. If they actually beat Forest, then they've actually set a new club record of 9 consecutive wins in all competitions. I think they had one in the 80s, didn't they? Which was 10 games, but they lost an FA Cup game in between. So I'm not sure we're quite having that one. So there's the carrot for Norwich City. In terms of that Wednesday game, though, just to reflect before we start talking about this Forest game coming up, does it show the mindset, the character that they have in their group, that they were able to come through that game? It was won by 2 excellent strikes in the end, but a game where they weren't particularly in top gear given perhaps some of their performances in recent weeks, but the fact they still got 3 points probably shows why they're at the top of the league and have the lead they do, right?
Oh, absolutely, Connor. And I mean, if you look at it, in this run of 8 games, we've conceded 3 goals in 8 games. Go back to the title-winning season in 2018-19, and we were conceding on average 2 goals a game. At times, we were scoring 3 and 4 and 5 in that run, so that's why we were winning games as we were. But you never felt comfortable that Norwich could defend a lead in that season. Nowadays, it's been a lot more comfortable. If you look at the goals that were conceded against Stoke, Yanulis's ridiculous pass across the area where he basically gave the goal away. A defensive aberration against Birmingham where the whole defence just seemed totally confused at that stage. And mistake after mistake that led to the goal. And then yesterday, a bit of luck, a rebound off the wall, and a superb finish from Jordan Rhodes, who just put it into the back of the net. And those are the only goals Norwich have conceded in 8 games. So I think it's a situation that shows the defensive solidity. I think Hanley and Gibson have been absolutely superb as a centre-back pairing. And Zimbo's done well when he's had to come in. And I don't know what's going to happen in the Forest game, if Gibson is going to be able to start that game, or if Zimmerman will partner Hanley at the back. We'll have to obviously wait and see what Daniel Farke says about that. But the solidity at the back is just extraordinary. The fact that Alexander Tettey, who is normally the go-to man to bring on when you're trying to defend a lead and just make sure he protects the back four, he's hardly been needed this season. Sorensen's done the job. Skip and McLean have done the job superbly. And our wing-backs have done great work defensively as well. So I really think that as far as things are going defensively, Norwich are looking so good. And as a result, the strikers know that if they put the ball in the back of the net, almost invariably it's going to win games. And I hear what Lee was saying about defending a lead and the 1-0 wins that Forest have had. If you look at Norwich this season, every time we've scored the first goal, bar 2 games, we've gone on to win. And those 2 games were draws. It's QPR and Coventry. And Coventry, we had the kit man was virtually playing in that game because we really had nobody to put out on the field. And QPR was a very dubious penalty given very late in the game. Otherwise, every single match where we scored the first goal, we've gone on to win. And against Sheffield Wednesday, obviously, we've come from behind twice this season in 2-1 wins. So I think there's tremendous belief in the side. And I think there's a lot of good things to be proud about with this Norwich City side, and particularly the way they've responded to that horrible relegation season of last season and just put it all together when it mattered. And as we say, an 8-game winning run now, and long may it continue.
Absolutely, yeah. It's certainly a really nice position to be in, with some nice performances accompanying it as well, both defensively and offensively, even given the perhaps slight mishap on Sunday. But I think, as you said, 3 goals in 8 games is not a bad record at all, is it? So you can forgive them for a slight lapse in concentration. You are going to concede goals regardless of who you are, even if you have the best defence in the world. Lee, previewing this game, how do you view it as someone who covers and follows Forest? Is it kind of a decent test for you guys to see just where you are? Is that how you see it? Do you see it as a real challenge? How do you sort of assess Forest and playing Norwich City? Can Houghton use it as a gauge to test sort of the quality of his squad, do you think?
It's difficult, isn't it? I think at this stage of the season, it's not going to tell us a great deal, I suppose. Norwich are 10 points clear at the top, so the odds are firmly stacked against us, it's fair to say. That's not being defeatist, it's just being brutally honest. I think there's a lot to admire about Norwich on the pitch and off it, really. I think they get a lot of stick because, constantly up, constantly down. It's every season they seem to be either fighting relegation or fighting promotion. So I think you've only got to look there. They've kept their manager, they've kept a lot of their players, they've got a good core of young talent coming through. They produce the talent every year. So I think whilst I hope we don't give Norwich too much respect tomorrow, I don't think it will. It's a bit of a free hit for us, I think. I think it's a case of giving it a go. I think what I'd rather us see is kind of have a go. I think we saw yesterday when Sheffield Wednesday started quite brightly, they did get a few opportunities and they did take one. Obviously, they couldn't quite keep Norwich at bay. But I think if we play with that mindset and the similar mindset that we did against Reading on Saturday, I think I wouldn't put it past us scoring. But I don't think it'll tell us a great deal. If we win, it'd be great. And it'd probably frustrate fans if we actually won, because it'd be a bit of a, well, where's that team been all season sort of thing. Mm-hmm. We've got Brentford away on Saturday, so it doesn't get any easier than that. And then after that, we've got Cardiff away. So the next 3 games, I know we're in a difficult situation, but we haven't really got a great deal to lose in any of the games. I've been looking at the fixtures of the teams down there, and over the next 3 or 4 games, we're all playing the same teams. We're all playing Norwich. We're all playing Brentford. A couple are playing Swansea. So, like I said earlier, I genuinely can't foresee a situation where even if we lose 3 on the bounce from here, I really can't see a situation where we end up in the bottom 3. That's no disrespect to the teams down there, but they are down there because they can't put results together.
Yeah, agreed. And on the evidence, well, Sheffield Wednesday are obviously now, 7 points adrift, I think. And
Yeah.
Rotherham have got a couple of games in hand. Wickham are down there and cut adrift as well. So it looks like those two are going to go. It just looks like that final position, doesn't it? That maybe is going to be decided. When I think back to the reverse fixture at Carrow Road, there was a decent spell for Forest in the second half where they caused Norwich some real problems. And that was probably ended by Emi Buendia's heavily deflected goal to win it. So does that kind of give you confidence, Lee, that Forest can rise to the challenge and they can, as you say, have a real go against this Norwich side? Because I think we've seen teams that do get on the front foot and do get after them, and as you say, do have a bright start, often deal with Norwich much better than perhaps teams that sit off.
Yeah, I think I do. I remember the game at Carrow Road, actually. It was the goal just before half-time that really killed us. I think if we'd have gone in at the break, with the score level, I actually think we could have gone on, with how we'd played in the first half, I actually think we could have perhaps gone on and won that game. Obviously, a lot's changed since then. But, yeah, I think we have got the players that can, the likes of Knockaert, he's been brilliant. I remember the goal we scored at Carrow Road was, one of his typical left-footed crosses that just whipped in and kind of deceived everyone. So we've got the players that can hurt any team in the Championship. It's just we've not been consistent enough to do it on a frequent basis. But along with that, it's just having belief. I think we've got a lot of players from last season who have spent the whole campaign kind of feeling sorry for themselves. It was disastrous what happened on the last day of last season. But we're 3/4 of the way into the season after now. A lot of the players that were at the club at that point, it should be out of the systems now. But because they've not had fans in the ground, I suppose it has been easier for players to kind of get stuck in a rut, because if you're having a bad period and there's 30,000 people in the stadium, you quickly forget and you quickly think, oh, actually, I need to pull my socks up a bit here and, start doing something. But because there's no fans in the ground, it's been a bit flat. And I think a lot of our key players, without being harsh, they've said it themselves when they've come out in interviews. A lot of our key players just simply haven't been good enough this season.
Yeah, and I think what you say there, you have to find it from within, don't you? And that kind of seems like the teams that have done well have almost found that mentality within themselves, rather than perhaps leaning obviously on the fans, which they can't do at the moment. So it's a really interesting point you make, Michael. In terms of this game, how do you view it from a Norwich City perspective? Because the position at the top, as we kind of spoke about, is comfortable. It's nice to look at the league table. I can imagine Norwich fans just drifting off during several days, just opening up various websites and looking at the league table and marveling at all the green in the wing column. But how important is it that they keep this momentum going and they try and get the job done as soon as possible? Because you referenced that Easter break. Obviously, there are going to be players going off to international duty. The game against Preston, I know there's a lot of frustration about that inside the camp, because they're having to play that on Good Friday, which is less than 48 hours after some players play internationals on the Wednesday. It's important that Norwich City get themselves in a convincing enough position before that sort of international break, because what follows could be injuries and who knows what else. So it's important, isn't it, that they get the points on the board in the next two games?
Well, Connor, we're fortunate enough in South Africa that we get to see a lot of games in the Championship on our local television. So I try and watch what our rivals.
Oh, I think we might have lost Michael there. Hopefully we can get him back shortly. Lee, I'll come to you then as we try to get Michael back. In terms of how you see this game going for Forest, just give us a little bit of an indication of how you think Chris Hughton will approach it. Do you think he'll look at it in the same way as he has recently and try and make it a fairly low scoring affair?
Yeah, I can't see him changing too much. I think it'll be the typical 4-2-3-1. When he first came into the club, we did see him pack the midfield with an extra man, so like a 4-3-3. But he's kind of abandoned that recently. And the players he's signed in January have brought some much needed balance to the team, and it has made us the games we've won have largely been down to the new recruits, to be fair. So I don't expect a different approach. I think he will see it as a chance to. He'll see it as a chance to win. He's quite defiant when he speaks, but prior to a game, he'll be under no illusions that Norwich are heavy favourites, but he will see that Forest have got players that can hurt them. I'm looking at the Norwich team and I'm struggling to see where. I've got to be honest. Again, not being defeatist, I think we're on a hide into nothing. Norwich are absolutely flying. like you say, club records on the horizon and this, that, and the other. So I'd be amazed if we got anything out of the game. But such is the nature of the Championship. Who knows? I guess we've just got to give it a go and see what happens.
Yeah, you're right. It's a great level of the Championship, isn't it? It doesn't care for league position or any of that form books, as we saw on Sunday. Actually, I think for large portions with Sheffield Wednesday. Michael, we've got you back, so I'll let you finish the point you were making. You that's okay. You were speaking about watching lots of Championship games on your local telly, so I'll let you pick up.
Yeah. So what I was saying is I get to see Swansea and Watford and Brentford quite a lot. And I've seen a couple of Forest games also recently. And I certainly think that they're a side who are playing well, maybe just lacking a little bit of belief here and there. But I thought they did well against Watford. I watched that game. Watford scored in the end a goal that really the keeper should have saved. It was a long shot from Messina just outside the box that flew in. And after that, Forest were probably the better side. They created more. Although I don't think there were too many shots on target in that game. They certainly have a creative engine room. Lee's mentioned Anthony Knockaert. I think he's the big danger man. Garner looks useful in midfield. I've heard that Joe Worrell might be missing for this game. So if that is the case, that's going to be a big blow for Forest and a big bonus for Norwich because he's so important defensively, I think. But there's certainly players who can hurt Norwich. And Murray up front, if he gets the opportunity, he will stick it away. But I think it depends also. You asked me how important this is. I don't think Norwich would mind too much given the league table and given where we are to go away from the City Ground with a draw. I know everybody wants to keep the run going. And if they can get to that magical 85 figure after Saturday, then it takes so much pressure off. Then it doesn't really matter about Preston if we have a few players that we have to bring in as a result of players being tired and coming back from international breaks. So, I mean, Preston, Huddersfield and Derby are games that on paper, at least, Norwich should win quite easily or should take the bulk of points, 5 to 7 points from those three games that happened just after the international break. So if we're sitting even on 83 points going into that break, the business could well be done before we face the Bournemouths and the Watfords and the Readings at home in mid-April. So from that point of view, if Norwich can do the business this week and get a win and a draw or back-to-back wins, it's virtually assured that pressure's off and we can take it easy and relax and just play our brand of football and just enjoy it in the run-in and watch the battle for second, which I think is going to be very intriguing.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's almost disconcerting when you paint the picture there of how smooth a run Norwich have now to the end of the season. I think anyone that's followed Norwich for a large period of time probably isn't used to it being as well, I don't want to say plain sailing because there's obviously things to go. There's 10 games to play, so anything could happen. But to see it be so smooth as it has been so far is a little bit disconcerting. Lee, let's start with you because you're the home side. So I'll obviously get your view on how you see this game going, and then of course I'll ask you for that dreaded score prediction as well.
It's difficult. I think it'll be an interesting game because it could. If we start well, we might actually see a situation where, like the Wednesday game, where we take the lead. But the big factor in that is us taking chances. I mean, we could have been 5-0 up against Reading before we did eventually score in the second half. So putting the ball in the net has been a big problem for us. When you're playing a team such as Norwich that are good in, defensively and offensively, it's going to be tricky. I do feel like I've got to give a score prediction that kind of goes with my head. Over my head. So I'm going to go for a very slender 1-0 home win.
Whoa.
Based on absolutely nothing, though.
Love it. That's fine. I mean, I think whenever you get opposition fans on, you want them to go with their heart and you want them to go big. So it's good to hear you be positive. Actually, it's not always been the case this season. Michael, let's come to you then. Let's get the flip side of that. As a Norwich fan, how do you see this game going? And do you back Norwich to get the 3 points, or are you settling for perhaps what you said earlier in terms of a point?
No, I think this season, the way things are going and the run that we're on, I'm not settling for a point by any means. I think Forest will give us a good go. I remember that Boxing Day match 2 years ago, that incredible 3-3 draw at Carrow Road with goals in the, 93rd and 97th minute after Forest were 3-0 up midway through the second half. So if we get a thriller like that could be quite exciting. But I think if Norwich score first, they'll see it out pretty easily. I think if Forest score first, it could open things up a little bit, but I believe Norwich have just got too much belief at the moment. They're on such an incredible run and the belief is oozing through every pore in the players in the side. I mean, Emi Buendia is just phenomenal the way he's clicking. My favorite ever goal probably for Norwich was a goal he scored against Hull City almost exactly to the day 2 years ago with that little back flick. They played in Pookie with a back heel and then Emi side footing it in. That's probably my favorite Norwich goal of all time. And those two combine so well. So I think even if Forest do take the lead, and even against a Chris Hughton side who's set up so well defensively, I think there are gaps there. Figueiredo doesn't exactly scare me as a centre-back. I think our strikers can certainly get at him and can create space around him. So I think if you want a scoreline, I think Norwich will win it 2-1. But I think it'll be a little bit tighter than a lot of people are expecting.
Yeah, I'm with you both, actually. I think it will be a tight game of few goals, I expect, but nonetheless, a really intriguing encounter. Lee, Michael, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate your time. Thank you all very much for watching as well. Of course, my colleagues will be at the City Ground on Wednesday evening to provide live coverage and all of the reaction and analysis from that game as well. And then, of course, for Blackburn as well. We'll hopefully be back for another Terrace Talk again, probably on Thursday or Friday later this week. You know when to watch out for them. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure you stay safe. Leave a score prediction and your thoughts on the game down below. We'll try and read as many as we can and make sure you stay safe as well. Thank you very much for watching. See you soon.